Good day, and welcome to the Connecting Material podcast of the Narrative Lectionary, Year 4, 2021 to 2022. And so we welcome you today to join us as we go through the stories that fall in between each Sunday. So we can kind of connect things together. It's the material that connects Sunday to Sunday, the stories that go in between. So we really glad you're here and really want to help you along and knowing your scriptures and figuring things out how the stories fit together. So let's just kind of dig into this and talk about this a little bit more. I am Pastor Kent. I'm pastor of Our Saviors and Central Lutheran Churches of the Fairfax Lutheran Parish and of Fairfax United Methodist Church. Now, last Sunday, we heard the story of manna in the wilderness, the manna that Israel lived on for those 40 years, along with the evening quail, and for that 40 years of wilderness travel. It was God's grace of providing them what they needed in a wilderness. So we fill in today with the story of the wilderness life of Israel and then their entrance into the promised land, and that land flowing with milk and honey. So what we are doing between these two Sundays is, from Sunday to Sunday, is where we left off in Exodus 16. We now next Sunday will pick up in 1 Samuel chapter 3. So we've got rest of Exodus and Leviticus and Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges. We're going to talk a little bit about all this stuff, but we're going to lead ourselves into the birth of Samuel. So let's get going on this. So last Sunday we heard of this manna, and we want to fill in now with the stories about their wilderness life, their entrance into this promised land, the land flowing with milk and honey, as God called it. Of course, like us, they are not good with this trust and obey lifestyle. So God find the need to punish them with venomous snakes. And when the people come to Moses and say, help us, and God gives them a plan. Moses designs a pole or a staff with the image of a snake wrapped around it and tells them all who look upon this snake, this emblem will be healed. Now, here's a sidebar for you. It doesn't have anything really to do with the story, but it's an interesting fact. Does this image, the snake and the staff, sound familiar to you? If you were thinking medical insignias, you were right. The symbol for the medical field is a caduceus. That's an emblem with a snake coiled around the staff. Kind of an interesting side point. So back to the story. They traveled by means of God's wilderness highway to the foot of Mount Sinai, which you see here, or a part of what you see here. So they're at Mount Sinai, and Israel receives the 10 Commandments, God's 10 words for living as God's people. And that's what you're witnessing on this side panel here, is Moses receiving those 10 Commandments. So God also will convey ordinances as the means to live a holy life and a safe life. And it's all laid out in the book of Leviticus, while Numbers recites the story of a people who are on a very difficult journey. And with everything, life, health, purpose, destiny, all there on the line. But God is there and continues to lead these refugees to the new promised land and reminds them of the covenant and the law which sets them apart from all the other people around them. They have a God who will give them directions for life and not all over the place like some of the gods. The God who cares enough to provide for them and to give them rules for life so that their lives may be abundant. So we end Exodus with Moses being called by God up into the mountains, and they do not see Moses anymore. And so the story goes that Moses died and God buried him. They had a very, very personal relationship in that way. So after Moses is gone, Joshua, the son of Nun, becomes the new leader. He was put there by Moses. And God reestablishes God's promise that God will be with him and with Israel if they but trust and obey. And in the closing chapters of Joshua, in the final days of Joshua's life, he lays it out for the people. They have a choice in life, blessing or curse, life or death. And then he charges them to serve the Lord rather than the other gods. And there, Joshua speaks that iconic phrase, but it's for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Joshua makes a decision based on what he's experienced. So he will, with his household, serve the Lord. Now, once established in this promised land of Canaan, Israel still goes through some struggles, especially with their border neighbors who will want to oppress them. They certainly don't want these people around them. And this struggle brought on the rise of 12 judge-like people. Israel had no leader. They were individual tribes, the 12 tribes of Israel, and they had no real leader after Joshua. And so up rose these judges, and we know them: Samson, Gideon, and of course Deborah, who took the reins of defeating Canaan's king Jabin. These judges were there as God's representatives, as temporary leaders, to foil and destroy anyone who came up against them. So what we have here, and why this happens, is a cycle of faithfulness, idolatry, judgment, deliverance, and it repeats itself over and over and over again through the cycle of the judges. And these judges rise up to defend Israel and to destroy the forces. And of course, the people are celebrating. Oh my goodness, yes, this. We were judged correctly, and God has delivered us. And they'd be really good for a while, and then they'd fall back into idolatry, and God would make a judgment, and God would have to deliver them from their enemies. And it goes over and over again and again and again. There's 12 judges. So read the book of Judges and you'll get some. They're wonderful, a bunch of short stories within a book. So anyway, Judges leads us into the book of Ruth, the Moabite woman, who married into an Israelite family and dedicated herself to her mother-in-law, Naomi, proving that love and family goes beyond blood and culture. So that brings us to today, or this Sunday. But we still got one more story, folks. The beginning of the book, 1 Samuel, begins with the birth of Samuel to a barren and elderly woman, Hannah, and her even older husband, Elkanah. She, by the grace of God, by the power of God, has a son in her old age. Now, to understand, in that time, for a woman to not have children, none, it was because she was considered barren, considered to have a judgment over her by God. And God's corrected that situation. And in gratefulness to God for removing her shame of barrenness, what does Hannah do? Hannah turns around and dedicates her son Samuel back to God to serve in the temple with the priest Eli. And that's where next Sunday picks up. And we hear the calling of the young Samuel by God. And our narrative journey continues Sunday in the temple. I hope you join us to continue to hear this story. Not only come here during the week on Wednesday nights at 7 o'clock, but join us in worship. Central Lutheran out in the country has worship at 5 o'clock Saturday, late afternoon, Saturday evening. Also at 9 a.m. Sunday morning, we have it at Our Savior's Lutheran, 10:30 at Fairfax United Methodist. You can catch us live stream too at Our Savior's Central Lutheran Church Facebook page and Fairfax United Methodist Church Facebook. At each one's scheduled worship time, we go live, and of course you can watch them anytime after they've been broadcast. But honestly, worship is much better in the company of other saints like you, especially within the congregations and in live worship. So I hope you join us, because like a community, the church needs you. So God's blessings. May God richly bless you as you continue your walk through scriptures.